You're listening to the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast with your host, Popo Jagaimo.
Lolly ho, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast. I'm here with my fourth guest, a man who pretty much needs no introduction at this point, but it is the legendary Rurikhan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for that intro. And Lolly ho yourself, I didn't know like what to expect for an intro. And Lolly ho, I'm like, oh, I can relate to that a lot, dude. You know that I leveled up an armor just so that I could do those quests?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Was it for the tank or was it for something else?
I mean, I like dwarves a lot, like traditional fantasy dwarves, like WoW dwarves, right? I'm really big into those, and you know they don't really have like an equal in XIV. So the closest thing is that beast tribe, and you know I leveled up the armor just so that I could do those quests. I don't really use crafting or gathering almost at all. But I was like, dude, I got to do these quests. I wanted to get the tank, but I also wanted to do the quests themselves because they're really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed that quest line. It was funny because I feel the same way. I knew we were going to be friends right off the bat because I'm a big dwarf person too. I'm basically a dwarf in real life. I'm 5'4" and stocky, so you know it just kind of fits me and my personality and everything. And you know, once we got to Shadowbringers and the dwarves popped up, I was like, all right. I love Vivi from Final Fantasy IX and everything else, and I'm all in on this. So, you know, it was funny. I was planning on doing the quests anyway, but it wasn't until I realized, oh, I can't get the tank without leveling a crafter, and I hadn't touched any crafters at all.
Yep.
And when I saw that, I was like, all right, I'm leveling every single gatherer and crafter just so I can do this because I needed that tank and I needed to understand the story.
I got like hardcore trolled by my chat because they knew all I wanted to do was to you know, the only reason I would touch in crafting or gathering was to do that specific quest line. And I tried leveling up a miner, and my chat they knew I was leveling up the miner to do that quest, and they didn't tell me because you can't do the quest with gatherers. It needs to be a crafter. And I was like, really? I think I had my miner up to like level 60 until someone told me, oh yeah, by the way, that only works for crafters. And I was like, seriously? Thanks. Appreciate that.
Well, it's good. I mean, at least you're able to gather your own materials and everything, but I guess you really don't need to gather your own materials to do those quests either, which is strange because I know Warcraft, again, WoW refugee mine. So at least with Warcraft, it would have been like you have to do all this stuff or you got to pay $8 million in gil to get in gold to get what you need to complete that quest line. But yeah, so that's hilarious that you're a big dwarf fan too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I got started in World of Warcraft with it wasn't even a protection. It was always a dwarf. Whatever character I'd made, it was always a dwarf. It's like I started with a hunter because, you know, you see the cinematic and there's the hunter with the bear and you're just like, oh, I want to be that. And then I went to like WoW Census or whatever it was, like, wait, 80% of people or something like that play hunters. I should play something else. I should play something the group needs. So I started playing a healer. I played like a priest for a little bit. And then I realized, no. What I got to do is I got to play a tank because like the healer does not set the pace in the dungeon. That's what I want to do. And then I just started tanking and never looked back.
Yeah, I did everything in Warcraft. So tell me a little bit about the history of you and maybe MMOs and Warcraft and everything for people that may not know. So how long have you been playing MMOs? How long are you playing Warcraft? When did you make the switch to Final Fantasy XIV?
So I don't know for how long I've been playing MMOs because it's one of the first genres that I really started playing. I mean, I first started with like Diablo 2. It's not really an MMO, but it was like my first online kind of experience, right? Then from Diablo 2, I started playing Ultima Online. So this was like really way back in the day in private servers and stuff like that. I couldn't play World of Warcraft when it came out because I was still living with my parents and I was like, hey, can I get money every month to play this video game? And my parents were like, no. I was like, well, okay, then. So I had to eventually get like financial independence so that I could actually get to play the game. And this was in like, I think 2007 or whatever. It was shortly before Burning Crusade came out. because I still played a little bit of vanilla. I was like level 56 by the time Burning Crusade came out. Then I jumped into Burning Crusade, and that's when I actually started like really going hardcore into doing heroic dungeons and doing raids and all of that stuff. Besides that, I played like the original Guild Wars, because that one you didn't have to pay like a monthly fee, which I also really enjoyed. But those were like kind of like my experiences. I also played Lineage 2 at some point, but I kind of regret that because that game was just a complete grind fest. Jesus Christ.
Your story sounded eerily familiar to mine. I played Guild Wars because of that exact same reason, in terms of not wanting to pay a monthly fee and not having
Yep.
the funds to do it. And it was funny because anytime, a grandparent or something would give me a few bucks here or there, it was always, all right, well, let me go to the store and buy one of those time cards and then play World of Warcraft for a little bit of time. But yeah, I was pretty anti monthly fee for a little while, and that's what really prevented me from jumping in on WoW from day one. And I did Guild Wars for a while, but treated it primarily as a single player experience, more or less, throughout most of my time playing it. But I want to say it wasn't until end of BC Wrath that I really started to hit my foothold and really fall in love with World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I think it's like it was all most players are around like Burning Crusade and Wrath is where they have some of their fondest memories, I feel like. Sure, a lot of people have really fond memories of vanilla for sure, but I think even more people have fond memories of Burning Crusade, and particularly Wrath. I think lots and lots of I mean, there's even the whole meme about, I think people in Asmongold's community they call people like Wrath babies and whatnot. And it's like, yeah, sure, whatever. But it was one hell of a fun expansion. It was, as far as I'm concerned, it was peak World of Warcraft. And I know that not everybody agrees with that, but hey, whatever.
I for a long time I considered Wrath the greatest World of Warcraft expansion as well. I think Legion certainly is a great expansion too. I see a little bit of disagreement there, so
Yeah.
we'll chat about that. But I think the thing with Legion that got me was the thematic elements, the fact that you got to have like the cool weapon. It wasn't so much the systems, it was more of the aesthetic of, oh, well, we're finally taking the fight to Sargeras, who I thought was going to be the end boss, and that was kind of disappointing for me that he wasn't really truly the end boss of that expansion. Of course, they have to keep dragging that out for eternity. But I was excited about that. The Mage Tower was something for me that was very fun. I did all 36 Mage Towers because I was an altaholic and just made it my life's mission to get every
Damn.
single transmog for all the different weapons. And it was some of the most fun I've had because I could push myself without necessarily relying on everybody else. And I kind of like that autonomy versus mythic raiding, which was, if one person
Gear
messes up,
dependent.
you all mess up, and gear dependent and everything else. But I think my favorite memories, of course, are always going to be Wrath because of the friends I made, because of the adventures that we went on. I enjoyed Legion quite a bit too, but I go back and forth in
And
my mind between
because
both.
let's face it, Wrath of the Lich King had the best raid ever made in World of Warcraft. I mean, it's just that simple, right?
You're talking Ulduar?
Of course I'm talking Ulduar. What do you mean you're talking Ulduar? Ulduar was the best because like Ulduar was right before they started going into like the segregation, because like I'm not a huge fan of having like the amount of stuff that they gave us with Trial of the Crusader. I know that a lot of people love Trial of the Crusader, but I was like, okay, so Trial of the Crusader, I actually had to take a break of the game because you were expected as a raider, you're expected like 10 men normal, 10 men heroic, 25 men normal, 25 men heroic. And I was like, listen, this is too much. And I already hate this raid to begin with. And I have to do this raid 4 times. This is way too much. It's not reasonable. I didn't like it at all. So
Yeah, it's funny. I don't have, maybe because our guild was struggling mightily at Ulduar, I don't have the most fond memories of Ulduar, but I definitely consider Ulduar like top 5 or maybe even top 3 in terms of raids. I don't know. To me, raids were always about like the theme of the raid, and I was never super big into the old gods and everything. I mean, obviously taking down Arthas was great, but I have my gripes with Icecrown Citadel. To me, there were too many silly elements in Icecrown Citadel to really fully immerse myself in the let's go take down the Lich King, which is one of the most metal things in all of fantasy. Big scary guy, like possessed merged souls, raising the undead, awesome sword. and then all of a sudden you get a Futurama reference in the one wing, and all of a sudden Sindragosa has a really awful voice in the others, and I'm like, Sindragosa is much scarier when she doesn't talk. What's going on here? But that raid I think had some great moments in it too. I just wish it would have stayed a little more edgy, I guess. But I have my preferences towards those things.
You want the serious business. You don't want the fun. It's like I personally really like I don't know which one is the Futurama reference. I don't really watch that
Professor
much Futurama.
Professor Putricide.
Is it Putricide? Is it the good news?
Yeah,
I love
think
that
so.
one. I love that. Good news, everyone. The slime is flowing.
I just sit there and I think to myself, would Arthas the Lich King really employ that guy, or would he just take him out and make him a mindless drone and make him make creations? I don't think he would suffer his constant commentary.
Yeah, but it's like, I think overall, right? Overall, the ICC experience is still real. I still thought it was really good. So I was like, whatever. I personally enjoyed that, but it's to each their own. Yeah. Either way, back in the day, it just felt like it was a pleasure every time that you would log in and you'd be excited to do stuff. You'd be excited to run. Hell, I would run heroics just for running heroics.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd go to Utgard Keep and run Utgard Keep just because that was fun. I'm like, dude, I like doing this. I don't care if I get loot or not get loot. Even though back in the day you could still get the tokens, and that would allow you to purchase gear, which was like a really cool system if you weren't lucky in raids. Because I'm the guy that was in Black Temple with tier 4. Because I was extremely unlucky. So it's just like, hey, I'm in Black Temple, tier 4, let's go, no problem.
Well, that's the thing with luck, right? It happens once in a blue moon. Like I got the best arms warrior, I think was it Killjane's Burning Wish in Legion. I got that legendary to drop. It was one of the best ones at the time in Nighthold. And then all of a sudden, I get nothing else, basically the rest of the expansion and before that. So it's like you hit that luck once, you get it, and then you have 12 additional years of playing the game that is just suffering and misery. That's all it is. But it's, you bring up, I think, a great point, and one of the things that I think has been such a refreshing thing with Final Fantasy XIV is I do things because I want to do them, not because I'm required to do them, or I feel like I'm letting down my teammates, because I had that exact same experience. My first time really developing a group and a group of friends that were consistent, that we played with all the time, was just a 5-man heroic team. We got on every night. We ran a couple heroics around 9 p.m. And even if I didn't need gear and no one else needed gear, maybe we just did it for the outfits, or we just did it for the fun, just to do something together. And it was a great time. And contrast that with today with Mythic Plus runs. And I think if anything's Lord of the Flies, Mythic Plus runs are certainly that.
It's like, I actually really like Mythic Plus. I enjoy Mythic Plus a lot. I know that not everybody does, and I understand why. But I've always appreciated the challenge with a smaller group, because like you said, when you're raiding, you're dependent on a lot of people. And let me tell you, I've played with a lot of people that didn't know what they were doing back in the day. That's what it is. But you would try your best, because these are people that you would hang out with, and whatever it was at the time, probably Ventrilo. Wait, was it Ventrilo?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was either Ventrilo or TeamSpeak. Whatever.
I was using Vent in Wrath time, so
yeah, so it was probably Ventrilo. And it's like you'd hang out with these people, so you're like, okay, let's just try and make the best of it. But sometimes it was rough. Luckily I had a really good raid leader, which me and him actually became really good friends. He actually came from the Netherlands to visit me in Portugal not that long ago, which was really cool. But it's like, you forge those friendships, and you just try to do your best for the people that you're hanging out with to play with them. And forging smaller groups allowed us to basically have, which people know how to play the game and whatnot. So you'd be like, okay, let's bring this guy in, let's bring this guy in, and let's try to do some kind of a strategy to min-max this to the nth degree and try different strategies in Mythic Plus. And that is fun. Doing that thing is fun. The problem that I have with Mythic Plus is that they're very unrewarding. They're extremely unrewarding, particularly during I remember in Battle for Azeroth it's like I've ever since Wrath of the Lich King, I've had kind of like an on and off relationship with World of Warcraft, right? So in Cataclysm, I think I stopped playing the game entirely because I got completely burned out on raiding. So I stopped playing the game, skipped Mists of Pandaria, then came back and did like, what was it, Warlords, whatever. Played Warlords for a little bit. That didn't stick. Played Legion for a little bit. That didn't stick. And then I played BFA. And with BFA, I got reunited with my old raiding group. And I burned out on BFA so hard because of the weekly box. It was every time I'd be like, okay, here we go. Let's go to the box. You go to the box and you get there, and it's like a pair of bracers that are useless. It's just so unrewarding that, like, hey, here's this loot pool of like, I don't know, 200 items or whatever. And there's like 5 items that you want out of there. And you go and you never get the item that you want. And on top of it, I was trying to play like a protection warrior. And as protection warrior, you had a specific limitation, which is you needed to have the Thunderclap Azerite trait, because if you didn't have it, you just couldn't play the game. You literally couldn't tank unless you had that trait, because the warrior was already gimped as all hell, and if you didn't have the Thunderclap trait, you'd be useless in a dungeon pretty much. So I even ended up re-rolling to a different class that I didn't want to, and I was like, fine, I'll play monk. And I was like, dude, how can you balance this game like this? Is like, let's say if your warrior is like a 5, the monk is like a 1000. Like, how does this make any sense? Well, it was so ridiculous, because even like there was this one ability that to me was completely and utterly broken, and I basically would abuse it in every dungeon. It's like the thing where you do some kind of, it was like a circle that you put on the ground, and everything that is in that circle just gets pushed off and they can't get inside. And I would just like break dungeons with that. It's like, oh, we're struggling. Okay, I'm just going to push everybody away. It doesn't matter. I'm like, what? We literally clear the boss because I did that. And I kept like some minions away from some mechanic that was about to wipe the whole raid. And it's like, we had, I don't know, there were very few people left alive, and I was about to die too. And I'm like, I'm just going to do my thing. Boom. Pushed it away, and it was long enough for us to win. And I'm just like, dude, this ability is broken, like completely and utterly broken. And then I'd go back to my warrior, and it's like, this character is useless. And the warrior is what I wanted to play, which is ridiculous.
So how many alts were you trying to keep up during those days?
In Battle for Azeroth, 2.
Okay.
I never had more than like 2. So it's like I had my warrior, which has always been my main character. But, you know, I haven't been able to play my warrior because at the start of every expansion, Protection Warrior is completely worthless. Like, it literally, you shouldn't play it. And you will not be able to do things that you do with other tanks if you play a Protection Warrior. It's just that simple. So in BFA, I played a little bit of the warrior and the monk, the monk was technically my main. And then when I came back for Shadowlands, I played a Protection Paladin and my warrior as an alt for a little bit. But it's like, again, I got burned out because of the amount of chores that you had to do in Shadowlands, which was ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, for me, someone who is an altaholic, self-subscribed, I have 12 characters, you know, all classes maxed at all times. That was just how I enjoyed playing the game.
Oh my
now
God.
I didn't try to keep them all up to date, of course. I always maybe try to do 3 or 4 up to date, but it became incredibly exhausting. And like you said, with that randomness of the weekly chest, it, you know, you're talking hours upon hours of content that you may or may not want to do. Like for me personally, especially because I healed a lot, Mythic Pluses was like the most stressful experience you can imagine.
Oh yeah. For healers. Dude.
Yeah. And I just, you know, I just couldn't really get into it. I enjoy doing it when I had a group of friends like what you had, and we could get together, but everyone, you know, in my group's lives are so scattered that finding a time to do it outside of the already 2 nights a week that you're raiding was next to impossible. So, you know, you end up relying a bit more on pugs, and that's a that's a whole nother thing. And it made me, you know, that's, I think, one of the big things that's helped me personally from going from Warcraft to Final Fantasy is the just survival of the fittest, drop off a dungeon run as soon as someone even dies once in the middle of a pull, and someone's just like, oh, I'm out, and then the timer's wasted and the keys wasted and everything else.
Yeah.
I got disconnected yesterday playing Endwalker, and we were in the first dungeon, and I was just doing it as part of a leveling roulette. I got DC'd, and I said to myself, oh crap, you know, we were probably like 5 minutes away from the last boss, and you know, I'm thinking I'm going to come back in and I'm going to get kicked because they're not going to wait for me. When I came back in, there was like, it wasn't a huge queue. It was only about 400, but there was a queue. I come back in, they're sitting there waiting for me, and they welcomed me back with open arms and said, oh, we're so glad you're back. And I was like, what? Seriously? Just one little
waiting.
One little blip of that gray DC in Warcraft, and you're gone instantly.
Oh yeah, instantly. Like people don't even. It's just a completely different community, and I think part of it has to do with the filter of the quests. You know, because you know how people refer to some quests as filters, particularly like the post ARR quest lines. Like, look, if somebody has the patience to go through some of those quests, they're not going to be the zoomers that are like, oh man, this is just go. Got to optimize, min-max my time to the nth degree. But the thing is, since the game respects your time more, I feel like people don't feel like their time is wasted, even if they have to wait a little bit in a dungeon, probably. Because to me, that's one of the things that I've noticed when I started playing 14 was that I feel like my time is respected. I mean, now is a unique situation. Like a lot of people will look at that, what I just said there, and they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, I love sitting around in queue for like 4 hours or whatever. Yeah, that's real respectful. It's like, yeah, I get it, right? But it's like when you're in the game, your time is respected, extremely respected in my opinion. And not just when you're in the game, because like you can take breaks. I've taken plenty of breaks since I started playing 14. And when I come back, I don't feel like, you know, I'm behind all that much. Whereas in World of Warcraft, like you take a 2-week break and you're like, oh, damn. It's like I missed out on all of like my what was the name of I'm beginning to forget like the names of things, like whatever you got out of Torghast. I forget the
Soul Ash or something. Yeah.
Is it Soul Ash? Okay, yeah. So you miss out on Soul Ash, you miss out on your anima, you miss out on your renown, you miss out. There's like 10 different systems of nonsense that you have to keep up with, and that they initially forced your alts to do. I'm not sure how they're handling that now, but it is just completely and utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
I actually in 2019, which was when I reached my peak frustration with World of Warcraft, I was like, I'm done with MMOs forever. Like that was it. Like in 2019, as a matter of fact, when I logged back in for Shadowlands, it was funny because my character was like in front of one of the box that you would get where you'd go to get your weekly piece of loot. My character was in front of it. It was like, that's when I made the decision. Like I picked up a piece of loot and I'm like, I'm out of this game forever, basically. But in 2019, I quit and I'm like, okay, guys, I think I'm just done with MMOs. I'm just going to go play other genres. This is utterly ridiculous. And people in my chat were saying, you got to try 14. You got to try 14. I'm like, okay, I played 14 in like 2013 when it initially came out. And I played 13 like you would play World of Warcraft. So I would go to each quest hub and I'd pick up all the quests, and then I'd do all the quests, and then I'd come back, turn them in, pick up all the quests again, and go out again, which is, in my opinion, the wrong way to play 14, which is why I burned out on it like in 2013, whatever, when I played it. And then when I came back in 2019, people were telling me, just do the MSQ. Don't do anything else. Just do the MSQ. And everything just started clicking and falling into place. And pretty much I've never stopped playing 14. Like, sure, I took breaks here and there whenever I'm like, hey, I don't feel like playing right now. I'm playing another game, whatever. I take a break. But I feel like since that experience, when everything really clicked for me, I was like, I'm never not going to play 14 unless they do something completely terrible and they just destroy the game. They would have to go down the path of World of Warcraft for me to stop playing Final Fantasy 14.
So when you say the path of World of Warcraft, do you mean microtransactions, not respecting people's time? Like what are the things that you don't want to see 14 doing?
I mean, I don't want to have I don't want to have what I would call free to play mechanics in my premium game, which is what you have in World of Warcraft. Let's be honest. I mean, the whole thing about collecting your loot on a weekly basis, like, what is that? I mean, sure, there's caps of tomes and all of this stuff, but like, if you do a dungeon, here's another thing: when you do a dungeon, is it too hard to give me the loot in the dungeon as opposed to me getting my loot like a weekly allowance? Like, it's ridiculous because like Mythic Plus gives so little loot, like actual loot when you do the dungeon. Because I'm not just doing when I do Mythic Plus, I wouldn't just do Mythic Plus for the weekly loot. I want to do Mythic Plus to get loot on the time. And even if I don't get loot, it's like whatever, right? But it's like the thing is, when I did heroics, I ran out of loot to get, and I was still doing heroics because it's fun. When I do mythics, I never run out of loot to get because I never got any goddamn loot. That's the problem. And
Yeah.
you go to 14 and you're rewarded. You go into the dungeon and like, you know, there's a chest. You're always going to get an item at the end of a dungeon for starters. Cause like, even if you don't get anything at the end of the dungeon, like they give you like a piece of gear for your class, I think most of the time. So you always get a piece of loot, even if you don't need it. I still run dungeons, even if I don't need loot. Like I keep running expert roulette and level 80 roulette, even though I didn't need it. I was like, I don't need it, but I just kind of feel like running a dungeon because I just like running dungeons. And it just feels rewarding that they respect you and they're still like, oh, here's these tokens that you can go and you can buy things. You might not need them for your main job. You might get it for an alt. You might do whatever the hell you want with it. But here's some stuff that you can get some stuff just for doing the things that you like. And World of Warcraft always felt like you have to go out of your way to get the things that you want. And it's like, no, I just want to play the game my way. Like, for instance, here's another example. 14 doesn't force anyone to do Eureka. You don't have to do Eureka. There's a lot of content there. There's lots of hours of content there, but it's all optional. And you still see players going out and running Eureka. I was running Eureka before Endwalker came out because it's content that I hadn't done and there's story associated with it. And there's even a raid at the end of it that I've never done. You know, I did Bozja. Again, completely optional. You don't have to do Bozja. It's just the fact that they give you content, and it's not going to be content that's for everyone. So some people, they want the raids and they want the ultimates. Other people, they want the deep dungeons or they want the areas like Bozja and Eureka, and they just do the content for everyone. Some people just want to hang out in Gold Saucer. Hell, there's people that just go there to play Mahjong. Like they have a subscription to 14 to play Mahjong. It's like, hey.
Yeah. My great aunt in Japan probably would be one of those women who would have a subscription to 14 just to play Mahjong because I think she's 90 something years old now, and she still travels to Tokyo every day to play Mahjong. I don't know, since COVID, I think things have changed a little bit, but that was her routine every day, Mahjong in Shinjuku, and just had a blast. And you know, I go through spats in 14 where I have those moments where I'm like, all right, for this week, my goal, Gold Saucer. Just going to get MGP, going to get all the stuff that I can get from that. Great. I'm not missing out on anything else. I'm not feeling that pressure to run Torghast or run Mythic Pluses at least once before the weekly chest is up or anything like that. I went through a spat where I was like, we talked about it, I think, at the beginning of the show. All I wanted to do was craft and gather. And so I just did that. And I just decided to turn into a gold making machine. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go full monetarist, Teleji, Lolorito. Yeah, I'm going to go just full, let's make as much money as we possibly can so I could buy a mansion. And I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. And it was great. I really want to go through a spat. I was going through a little bit of a spat there, but need to get through Endwalker. Actually, I shouldn't say need to get through Endwalker. Want to get through
Endwalker.
Yeah. You know, where I just wanted to become a triple triad champion and play in tournaments there. So there's all kinds of just things to do, and it's great. And there's none of that pressure. And for those of you who are listening who may not be Warcraft veterans, when we talk about the loot that comes out of Mythic Plus, it is basically you get one piece, maybe two pieces of gear, I think, at the end of a dungeon.
It's like there's one piece for 5 players, by the way. So it's not like you can break it apart in 5 little pieces. So there's one guaranteed piece of loot at the end of the dungeon, which can be for any of the 5 classes that are in there. And within those 5 classes, it could be for any of the specs of those classes. And there are certain items that quite simply just have bad not traits, bad stats. There's some items that just have bad stats. They're bad for like every single class, but they still put those items in there. So you can just get a completely useless item. You might get a useful item for one of the persons in your group. And then if you timed the dungeon, I think if you timed it, then you would get 2 pieces of loot for your 5 players. You know,
and I want to know who made the baffling decision when they went from BFA, which I believe the thing in BFA was if you could, you know, time the key or dramatically over time the key, you would get multiple pieces of loot. And then all of a sudden you get to Shadowlands and they're like, you know what sounds like a great idea for raids and for Mythic Pluses? Less loot. Let's just give them less items per raid boss, per dungeon. And then they've slowly walked it back, but it's never gotten to that BFA Legion level in terms of the number of items that you get. But who made that
justified
decision?
it. They justified it by like, oh, but we have this vault now, which allows you to target. The vault is so incredibly bad. And I was just like, people were defending the vault from, you know, the moment that they talked about the vault.
I was.
And I
thought it was going to be better than the chest.
It's like, it's better than the chest, but it's like, it's almost like, hey, look, if you want something better than this turd you found on the street, then maybe this dirty rag that you found on the street is not that much better than that turd. It's just, it doesn't stink as bad, but it's still pretty useless, right? It's like, I didn't like the idea of the chest because ultimately you're doing all of these things. It's still for 1 piece of loot. And by the way, I was incredibly lucky with the vault. Every week I got a major upgrade off the vault. I was super lucky. Like the first week I got a really great shield. Second week I got like a really great weapon. Third week I got like, I don't even know what it was, but it was really great. I kept getting really good upgrades off of the vault. I still don't like it because it feels like a free-to-play system. It feels like those mobile games that you have where you're just like, oh yeah, tap the button every now and then here's a reward. It's like, no. You're paying full price for this game, plus whatever the expansions cost, plus a monthly fee, and they're hitting you with like mobile game mechanics. Like that's ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous, and I've never liked that aspect of it.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously you reacted and I made that video about pay to win mechanics. And I think I was trying to be a little less just purely critical of the whole process. And I included in the bit with Yoshi P where he said, you know, we're not going to sell minions and whatnot, just because I didn't want to intentionally edit that out, you know, because they've since changed their minds on those things.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing I just find so insidious about the WoW token is, you know, I've always been a person that's been poor in World of Warcraft because I didn't have as much time to play. So every time, you know, I didn't have enough time to play, the only way that I could, you know, afford things to keep up with the rest of my guild was to pay gold for it, to buy it on the auction house. And so whether that be flasks, whether that be, you know, potions, enchants, all that stuff. Anytime you got a new piece, it was like, well, I guess I'm semi-bankrupting myself again just to keep up. And then if you have multiple alts, it becomes even more tiresome. But you know, I will say I was guilty of wanting to potentially just buy gold through the WoW token to get that Caravan Brutosaur. And I'm so glad that I didn't. I never bought a WoW token. Oof. But I was thinking about it because I was like, you know how handy that would be to be able to have the auction house wherever you go. And, and you know, I just started looking at all the different things that are just not just gold, you know, gold sinks, but like time sinks and all these other things that are there to basically loop you in. I think, like you said, like FOMO, just if you don't do it, if you don't keep up, you're done. And, you know, I've taken a break for a month and come back, and then all of my friends don't want to run Mythic Pluses with me, and people say, "Oh, you have bad friends," and I'm like, "No, I don't have bad friends. I get it. I don't want to run Mythic Pluses either, so I understand it from their perspective." But you know, I'm gone for a month, and because I'm so far behind, and I'll be a drag on the group. Like people don't want to play with me anymore, and that's upsetting. So listen,
I was incredibly lucky, like I told you, because my raid leader, like I said, we became really good friends. And when I came back for Shadowlands, I came back before Shadowlands came out. So they were still, you know, running Mythic Pluses and BFA and stuff like that. And I came back and basically my raid leader picked me up from the bootstraps, And he took me into Mythic Pluses. And let me tell you, I think it took us like, I don't know, 3 weeks of hardcore Mythic Plus every single day for me to get caught up. And when I'm talking hardcore, like I want to make sure people understand, we're talking like about 5 hours a day, almost every day of running Mythic Plus nonstop with pre-made groups that he would make to make sure that, you know, we'd get as many plate people in the group as possible so that we get as many plate drops as possible to slowly raise my item level. And then he went and he did the, what was the thing? There was these divisions or whatever, the divisions of N'Zoth, whatever, where you would get like, yeah, the horrific stuff. And then he went and he carried me through that as well, where basically I would just like walk in there and die within like 30 seconds. And he's like, yeah, just stay in the ground. Don't worry about it. And then he'd go around, collect all the things, do it, all the objectives. Like I got carried hardcore. And until the point where then I was able to, okay, now you're a viable tank. Now we can play with you and actually push keys. But it took 3 weeks. That's insane.
That's like
3 weeks of playing about 5 hours a day just to get caught up. Not even to excel, because like I wasn't even compared to like the best tanks that you could be at that point. And just in terms of like of gear and the skills that you could get from the horrific visions and all of this, I wasn't even close, but I was viable. And I'm just like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like if I want to get somebody caught up in 14, it's not going to take me nearly as long. I can go with them, do a couple dungeons, like, hey, we're ready, let's go raid. Like that's it. It's
well,
like what?
You know,
or even just even worse, you can just go and you can just buy crafted gear and equip the person with the crafted gear. And hey, you're ready to raid. Let's go.
Yeah, I took a break, so I started playing 14 at the end of Stormblood a few months before Shadowbringers launched. And, you know, I played through the 5.0 storyline in Shadowbringers. And then I pretty much, because I couldn't commit to 2 MMOs and, you know, I was treating 14 like it was a single player experience, which was awesome. And I really enjoyed it. I took a break and then I came back over the summer. People have heard me say this about 2 weeks before all the streamers decided to start streaming 14 and the lawsuit broke. It was funny. I was like, oh, I'm paying the sub for it. I'm just going to, you know, log in and see how I can, you know, play this. I was at my parents' house. I had the remote play from my PS5 and was just remote playing on my iPad. And I was like, well, this is fun. I can just do dungeons and roulettes and whatever while I'm sitting on the couch and whatnot. And then all the streamers come over and everything goes to mayhem. But I had not played for an entire expansion's worth of patches. And, you know, I got through that story and I got to the end game. And yeah, I bought all the exarchic, high quality crafted items and whatnot. It wasn't terribly expensive. A lot of them I could equip on multiple different jobs since I have every job maxed. And, you know, the only thing that was really a difference was the weapons, and obviously Rogue and Ninja have different outfits than some of the rest. But I mean, I was 510 item level and really only 10 to 20 off of anybody else at the end of the end game, which wasn't, you know, it was a difference, but it didn't feel like a huge difference. Yeah. And it was nice to just be able to jump in and be like, yeah, I can do what I want to do right now.
Yeah, it goes back to them respecting your time, because some people might think, oh, maybe you were lucky when you did it. It's like, no, whenever a new raid tier comes out, new gear goes out to the crafters, new recipes go out to the crafters so that the crafters can craft gear that enables people to jump into that raid. Is it going to be like BIS? No, it's not going to be BIS, but it'll be good enough that you can get into the raid. Yeah, it shouldn't be BIS. If you're raiding, you get the BIS in the raid. And then if you're not raiding and you want to get into raid, you can just buy this stuff, or you don't even have to buy it. That's the other thing. If you don't mind taking a little bit longer, you can just like, you know, do the weekly cap of whatever tomestones happen to be the relevant ones at the time. And then you just buy whatever tombstone gear it is. And it'll be, again, you're ready to raid. The point of the matter is there's multiple ways to get you to like endgame if you want to go to endgame, which you don't even have to. But there's multiple ways, and none of them involve like, yeah, go run Torghast 50 billion times and then go buy 10 WoW tokens so that you can go buy the crafting materials for your legendary and then use that and then craft your legendary and then go grind God knows how much that you can get the right soul bindings or soul conduits or whatever. You know the things that I'm talking about. And then you can go and you can play the game. Oh, and by the way, make sure that you're in the right covenant for your class and for your spec, because otherwise, you're going to be useless.
Yeah. Yeah. And trust me, when I was playing Hunter in Shadowlands, that was what I was trying to have as my main. And I just wanted to be a Necrolord Hunter because I liked that Chakram. That Chakram was cool. I liked chucking it. It was a fun ability to push. And everyone's like, oh, if you're not Night Fae, then you're pretty much just not viable there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to be Night Fae. To me, the movement thing was pretty much useless for hunters because they already have movement. And then I'm like, well, at least I have a shield. That's a little bit positive of benefit. But yeah, I don't want to say blackballed for choosing to be a Necro Lord Hunter, but I had to, actively prove to people that I could do good DPS, which I could with that Chakram. And it was,
It's look, I was playing a Paladin. And I wanted to be a Necrolord simply because that was the covenant that I liked the most.
Mhm.
Like I went through you do the intro of the Shadowlands and they give you a tour through all the covenants. And I'm like, okay, I don't like the vampires. I don't like the winged people. I don't like the tree huggers. These Necrolord dudes are pretty badass. And like when you get in there, it's just like a Thunderdome arena. I'm like, I like these dudes. These are awesome. And it's like, yeah, but you're a Paladin and you want to do Mythic Plus. So you have to be Bastion.
Mhm.
It's that simple. Like people might think that I'm joking. I've told people like, look, it's about a 30 to 40% increase in just performance in your class.
Yeah.
Like going from Bastion to Necrol at that time. Now I don't know what the differences are because I haven't played the game in a while, but at that time, because like every time that I would do the whatever the ability was, the divine bell or whatever it was that threw the shields and the shields multiplied and it was completely ridiculous.
The one
Every
that
time I
everyone
did
saw
that-
and went, that's the best ability. Like without even knowing the numbers, everyone just goes, there's no way that ability is not automatically better than every other one.
No, but it's like even if you did the numbers, like I have DPS meters, right? Every time that I would use that ability, I jumped to the top of the meters every single time. I would do the most damage out of anyone in the whole group, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I think you brought up something interesting. One of the things that I find to be the most refreshing in Final Fantasy XIV is I might sound ignorant when I say this, but it feels like there's just a severe lack of RNG, or maybe there's just so much RNG in WoW that it becomes overwhelming. Because I feel like with 14, if you work towards something, you might be moving at maybe a slightly slower pace because you do a little bit of this every day and you get some tomestones and you're accumulating stuff, but it's all building towards something. It's all kind of counts. And there's, people accuse 14 of being very grindy because of that. And for me, I don't mind that because that means that every activity I do is at least pushing me towards the end goal. Whereas with Warcraft, especially with Mythic Pluses and raids and everything,
Like,
it's RNG on top of RNG on top of another RNG system.
I'll give you a super easy example. Extreme mounts. Every time you do an extreme fight and say you want to get the mount from that extreme fight, right? So there's a chance that the mount drops. But even if it doesn't drop, there's always going to drop like a token.
Mm-hmm.
Like depending on which one it is, it's going to be a different name for the token. But the idea is after you get 99 of those tokens, you can just buy them out. So it's like you do something 99 times, you can just get them out. Like that's it. You don't have to wait on RNG. Like, and there's the other thing, like they don't lock you out of getting that mount. Like, I mean, depending on whether it's current content or not, because I haven't really done current extremes, but like the old extremes, you can just farm until the mount drops. Like just do the old extreme until the mount drops. It's that simple. It's not like, oh, you've already done your try this week. You've pulled the lever this week. That's it. That's all you get, which is, I've always been obsessed with the Ashes of Alar. And I would go in there every week and I would beat on Kael'thas every week and it would never drop. And then I come to 14 and there's like the closest thing to that would be the Firebird, which also looks really amazing because I'm a sucker for Phoenixes. I love Phoenixes. So I basically went in there and I grinded the heavensward birds and then I got my Firebird. There you go. It's done. It's like I was able to work towards an objective and eventually just get that objective. And that is good. That's a good thing. And that's respecting your time rather than when I grinded the bindings of the Windseeker for like, I don't know, 6 months or however much it was, because I wanted to get Thunder Fury. Like it took me like 6 months of going there every single week to get the bindings of the Windseeker. That's ridiculous. That's
Mhm.
completely ridiculous.
Well, it's been well, and what WoW does too is after an expansion launches, they still have the weekly limit in terms of the number of times
Yep.
you can run it, and then they lower the drop rate on the mounts at the end of the most difficult ones.
They do that as well.
Yeah, I
I
believe so.
was I
So
wasn't
so
even aware.
so with certain fights, and their justification for it is, well, people who got it when it was relevant content, we want to make sure that that mount stays valuable to that and rare for that person. But then, they lower the drop rate to, 1% or less than that, something like that. I think it goes from like 5% to 1% in terms of the drop rate. And so now you're talking about, just playing the law of averages, 100 weeks of running that thing. If you get it, in the true average in terms of when that thing's going to drop, it's been, I mean, now I haven't done them every week, but there's been weeks where I've done it on 12 different alts running ICC to get invincible.
Jesus
I
Christ.
still don't have invincible from the Lich King. Still. To this, I mean, now granted, I've unsubscribed from WoW for the first time for a while, so I'm not actively going for it anymore. But Wrath of the Lich King came out in what, 2008, 2009, and
Yeah, I think it must have been 9. Yeah.
so that's 12 years of no invincible, even though I've tried to get it, a
Jesus
ton.
Christ.
So
Yeah.
you know, just and I think too about the consumer psychology and the individual psychology behind RNG trends and things like that too. And it really feeds into, if you look at the literature on it, it really feeds into addictive tendencies. That's why things like lotteries are so addictive, is because people are looking for that huge payout and they just never know when they're going to get it. So it triggers whatever dopamine or whatever chemical in people's brains to have that, oh, well, this is the time. This is the time. This is the time that I get it. Versus, you have that chance in 14 to get a drop, but you're always progressing towards it anyway. So I almost think from a value perspective, or a values rather perspective, the thing that 14 teaches people is work hard towards something and you will receive your outcome. Whereas with WoW, it's work really hard towards something, and maybe if the algorithm, if the random number generator, if Blizzard decides that we want to give you it this week, maybe you'll get it. But come back next week and try again.
Yeah.
And that's a, I almost think from a, just how does this train people, and how does this, reinforce good behaviors in people? WoW's reinforcing some addictive bad behaviors of just hope and pray that you get something, whereas 14 shows and people that there is rewards at the end of kind of hard work and grinds and things like that.
And it's like, I don't even think, compared to some of the grinds that I've done in like WoW, I don't even think it's that bad. Most of the grinds that
I don't
you
either.
can, like, there's some of them, like some people are trying to go for that mentor roulette mount or whatever. We got to do like 2,000 or however many it is mentor roulettes. I'm like, okay, that's grindy as hell. Okay, that's some crazy stuff. And those mentor roulettes are completely random. They can be something real easy or it can be something real hard. Like, yeah, that's a grind. But the thing is, after you do those 2,000, you're gonna get it. Like it's that simple. You're gonna get it. Whereas in World of Warcraft, you could do those 2,000 and still not get the thing that you're trying to work for.
Well, and if you look at it from a rewards perspective, I've heard Asmund talk about what makes Ashes of Alar really valuable. It's that it's rare. And when you start putting in too many mounts into a game and too many reskins and recolors of mounts and non-unique things, then they become less valuable, less prestigious from the outcome. And I think that, it's an interesting perspective when you think about mounts and rarity and things like that. RNG really doesn't convey a value of, oh, that person was really skilled to get that mount. It conveys, oh, that person was really lucky to get that mount. Whereas the mentor roulette mount, that shows that person worked really hard to get that mount, that they grinded for a long period of time. And I almost think that makes that mount more valuable because it's now not about luck, it's about persistence.
It's gonna depend on who you ask, basically, because some people will consider the luck thing more important, other people will consider the skill thing more important. Me personally, I never really paid too much attention when it comes to how rare a mount is. I'm just all about like how cool
Yeah.
is the mount. That's
Yeah.
what I care about. Like the Firebird is not rare, but it's cool. The Rathalos, he's not rare either because he's pretty easy to get, but it's cool. That to me is what matters.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone gives the WoW art team, and I think generally they most of the time do a pretty good job. I mean, they've created some really, really cool looking stuff with a very unique aesthetic. But I think that
They do a fantastic job. I love the World of Warcraft art. I know that a lot of people then they start this war with, oh no, Final Fantasy 14 art is better, WoW's art is better, and I'm like, I think they're both great. I like the art and the art of 14. I didn't like it at first, but then I got used to it, and now I love it. I love it. And the WoW art, I love the WoW art as well. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably the only good department that company has left is their art department.
Well, I think about, they're just two different aesthetics, right? They're two different aesthetics. It's like trying to compare, Pixar animation with traditional Disney animation. They're both beautiful in their own different, unique ways. The thing I was trying to make a point about with the WoW art team is, and I don't think it's necessarily the art team, but if you look at the rigging on a lot of the mount models, on a lot of the different things that are out there, it's always the art team putting stuff on top of an existing rig. So it looks similar. It behaves kind of similarly. A bear is a bear is a bear most of the time, or a wolf is a wolf is a wolf most of the time. They put the art on top of it. Whereas I feel like in 14, there's fewer mounts, but they always feel more. There's so many more unique rigs underneath them, right?
Yeah.
Like they all have their own personalities and they all have their differences. So they feel very different. Whereas with WoW, there's a lot of just recolors of mounts and reskins of mounts, but then there's also just recolors and reskins of gear. And the fact that you can dye your gear in 14 is amazing because now it's like, well, now I actually don't have to sit there and run that stupid dungeon again once a week to see if maybe I'll get that drop that I want of the color variant that I want. I can just dye it to what I want once I get it.
Yeah. I mean, assuming that it can be dyed, because not everything can be
Right.
dyed. It's also important to mention that.
Yep.
But it's just one of those things, right? When you enable the people, when you give them the control to the things that they can do in terms of like dyeing their gear and customizing their gear, it's just it just leads to so much more satisfaction as opposed to like, oh, I have to go run this piece of content because I want to get the red version of this cloak that I have. It's just not a good thing because you're like, well, I already unlocked this cloak. Why can't I just paint it? Like, well, why I got to go look at this recolor? And you have the same thing in mounts. Like you're talking about all of these mount recolors and stuff. I was going to ask you if you've ever ridden the Gabriel Alpha, which is the one of the Bosra mounts.
No, I haven't. I've only done the
little robot.
I've only done the bit to get to Bosra, which was a fantastic story, by the way. I mean, the journey to getting to Bosra was lights out. It like so many stories that are, would be afterthoughts in WoW. They surprise you and they're just great. But no, I haven't rode in that mount yet. Sorry.
Yeah, but like, so that mount, when you're in the ground, he's a robot. But if you jump into the air and go into flight mode, he actually like transforms, kind of like a transform, almost like, and now he's like a flight machine. So it's like you have a lot of things like that are cool. Like you've seen the Regalia, I would assume, the car from Final Fantasy 15.
I've got the Regalia, yeah.
Yeah, so like when you take off and it goes like transforms and stuff like that is cool stuff, right? And that is stuff that you don't see in WoW nearly as much. Like they make a big ass cat with really big eyes and it doesn't blink. He's got these huge eyes, never closes them. Like what? What do you mean?
I'd never noticed that. That's odd.
People called it out instantly. I was talking about it and people in my comment section, did you notice that cat never blinks? I was like, oh no. He's got like huge eyes, never blinks.
Just stares into your soul. All of a sudden those eyes turn into WoW tokens and you just see them.
Oh man. And it's like WoW token is one of those things, right? when you start thinking about it, it just gives them an incentive to make things that require people to spend more money so that they have to go buy the WoW token.
Mhm.
It's just straight up an incentive.
Yeah.
Like as a company, they're incentivized. Hey, we can increase our profits if we, make things. They already do stuff like the 6-month sub mount and whatnot, and the 6-month sub transmog set, and all of this. And now on top of it, when you get the WoW token involved, it's just like they have all of these financial incentives to make the gameplay experience worse.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
It's one of the things I wish I would have added to that video I made about pay to win, and maybe I'll make a follow-up on it at some point. But, a lot of people in the comments, of course, were making the claims like, yeah, well, you can just make the gold and pay for your sub. So they're losing out on subscription dollars for those people that make the gold and just do that to pay their sub and get it free, because there has to be someone on the other end of paying for that. And I think that that's a fair point. My counter...
I don't.
Hold on. My
My
counter argument to that would be, who are the people that have the time to grind that money? Grind that gold, that in-game currency to pay for the WoW token. Very few people who only have a little bit of time to do that have the ability to grind that gold to pay for that WoW token. So, when people make the claim that, oh, it's for the stay-at-home dad or the working dad, single parent who just comes home and just wants to be able to play the game and whatnot and just grinds their money. And I'm like, they're not doing that. They're not doing that. The people that are going to buy the WoW token are the ones that are the most locked into the game and just need to want to get everything possible to min-max everything about their character. That's my take on it.
It's like I believe that there are some people that,
of course,
that benefit from the WoW token for sure. I would imagine, particularly in like in certain like countries, like one of the countries that always comes to mind to me is like Brazil, because there's a huge disparity in the population's wealth. Like you have people that are super rich, then you have people that are like super poor, and there's like nothing in between. You're either mega rich or you're mega poor. There's like no middle class almost in Brazil, right? And I feel like in places like that is where you have people that potentially have more time than money, because maybe they can't like get a job or something like that, or they're struggling in some other way, and they might have the time to grind that gold. But here's the thing. Ultimately, to me, the problem is like, and I'm very sorry for the people that can't afford to pay the sub, but ultimately this is basically a conflict of interest when it comes to the WoW token, because the downsides of WoW token are way more than the upside. Sure, there's people that are able to play the game that wouldn't be able to play the game otherwise. I'm very sorry. But it's like there's also a ton of people that are having their experience be way worse because of that. Because when you're talking about, there's always this talk about like, it's for the people, WoW token is for the people that don't have time. They don't have time to play the game. And when they play the game, they want to have fun. It's like, what's so fun about me swiping my credit card to give them more money on top of a sub fee to already play something that's a subpar experience to begin with? They should be focusing on giving me something that is worth me playing, as opposed to giving me options for me to skip the playing part. Why not just make making gold in the game fun, as opposed to nerfing every single way there is in the game to make gold to begin with? Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, you look at 14, and like currency is not worthless, but it's not that big a deal. Like most players can go and they can go buy a plot of land if they want to. If you don't want to buy a plot of land, there's only two reasons for that. A, either you're still in the trial and therefore you're guild capped and you don't have enough money, or B, you simply don't care. Because like if you care enough to get money in 14, you can get money. I have 17 million. I suck at making money in any MMO. I've always sucked at making gold in any MMO. And I have 17 million gil. Mm-hmm. Like I can go buy 3 plots of land and I won't even be out of money.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, I'm like I said, I'm a person that was constantly broke in WoW, constantly, and I geared every job, every crafter, every gatherer. Which, by the way, crafting and gathering gear is expensive.
Oh yeah,
and I probably should have just crafted it myself since I was doing everything together. But I just chose to buy it because I just wanted to get through it as fast as possible. But I probably spent, I want to say, 14 to 16 million gil, getting all my characters geared and everything. Most of that was the crafters and gatherers. And then buying the mats and everything for that too. Made some of that money back on selling some things on the market board. But I have 23 million gil, even despite spending that gil. And I was someone who was always broken WoW. And I haven't worked that hard at it. I haven't got to play much because of the endwalker login boss. But you know, my goal is by 6.1 to have 50 million gil so that I can put buy a raffle ticket for one of the big Ishgardian housing mansions and have that ready to go once that launches.
Do those cost 50 million?
The plots, yeah.
Oh damn.
The mansion. So the mansions, the biggest ones are, I believe, 50 million. And then it ticks down. I don't know how they're handling it with the raffle ticket.
Isn't it the house itself, not the plot, right? The house is probably what's that expensive.
The house is actually cheaper than the plot. So I
don't do a lot of housing.
It goes 50 million, 20 million, and then 5 million. And then, it shrinks from there because of the way the timer works now. It like just kind of gradually decreases. But yeah, those are the caps, at least from the guides that I've read. And then it's, a few 100,000 on top of that or a few million on top of that to get the actual house. But that's a goal that I think is reasonably within my sight because we're going to have about 4 months, I would say, till 6.1. And I think I can do it. And that's a great feeling. Whereas I'm not having to waste my gil on all this other stuff, to keep up and be viable just to play the game.
And not to mention that there's also a side of it that it's like, doesn't it feel better to just like earn it in game while doing things that you kind of like are having some amount of fun in? Because like most of my gil generation is passive. So like I'll do a dungeon and I'll greed on the items. Usually I don't need on items that I don't actually need. So I'll do the dungeon, then I'll greed on items. And it's like, there's some people that don't even care for rolling. And so I get the items, I bring them in, go to the grand company, whatever, transform them into seals, then get some materials off of there, sell it on the auction house. That's most of my guild generation right there. It's just passive.
Yeah.
I don't even do it actively. It's just like you just do decent usage of the stuff that you end up getting. I'll sell the occasional drop that I get on the auction house or whatever. But and that's the thing, it's easy. You don't need like an add-on to decode the auction house for you. Although I think that WoW has gotten better at it by now. I don't know. But back in the day, it's like if you ain't got auctionator or auctioneer, you're doing it wrong. Like you gotta have one of these two add-ons. And I was really happy with the fact that you can just jump into the auction house there. It's like, okay, what's the cheapest anyone is selling this item by? What did it sold by last? You can just see all of these things instantly. You're like, okay, I'll sell it at this, and boom, done.
Yeah, I use the Universalis webpage, and mostly just for the efficiency of being able to type out what I'm looking for over there, or if I'm gathering to see like what are the most valuable, herbs or logs or mining nodes or whatever that are most valuable at that point in time. But I don't feel like I need to. It's just a nice to have thing. That's something I think is very different too, is the approach to add-ons, and I'd be curious to wonder what you think about it. Obviously, the most I would say obvious one for most people is we don't want you using a damage meter, or at least we don't want you publicly using a damage meter. And then
it's not even publicly. I don't think they care that much. The biggest thing is they don't want you, shaming people for dealing less damage than somebody else. They don't want you like, okay, we're kicking you out of the group because you're just not dealing enough damage. Which, there's some stuff to be discussed there, I feel like, because, you should be able to do adjustments based on damage, but there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. You can just go to someone like, hey, look, you need to go train your rotation. You need to go, hey, your damage sucks, get out. Right? There's those two different ways of doing things. But ultimately, when it comes to their add-on policy, it makes me happy simply due to the fact that at least their UI is usable out of the box. Because you can customize everything. You can put everything the way that you want to. You can do. You don't need external add-ons to do anything. You can customize the whole thing. Unlike World of Warcraft's, which I've said multiple times, people are like, you don't need deadly boss mods to raid. And I was like, okay, yeah, go have fun.
Yeah. Good luck reading that completely subtle non-over exaggerated motion that a boss does that's just going to wipe your raid over and over again. Good luck. Yeah, like it's I find that, my first impression of the Final Fantasy 14 boss fights was very much like, oh, there's a lot of big cones and colors and things coming at me that don't feel like they're the boss doing those abilities. They're very clearly visual guides for you to understand what the boss is doing. My first thought was, well, that's a little less immersive. But then as I thought about it more and more, I was like, well,
It's DBM.
Yeah, I'm like, that's just DBM built into the game, except for honestly, a better version of DBM almost built into the game. And I was just like, after I got kind of used to seeing the big orange cones and the like little blue circles and all the other little things that pop up, it fades into the background pretty quickly. And it's just nice to not have to worry about whether or not that add-on was updated with the last patch to make sure that you're on top of things. Or if it's got the right timers associated with it, because it's got the right timers associated with it. It's built into the game.
Yep, pretty much. And I feel like the way that they introduce mechanics, it makes players just be better raiders in general. Because like in terms of normal raids, because I haven't really done current extremes or savages, because when I do those, I want to do those with like a pre-made party, because I think that'll be more interesting. I'm not a big fan of jumping into Party Finder and then just like wiping, and then eventually somebody leaves and then you go to another group and do it all over again, and somebody needs to learn. Like, I want a consistent group where people are learning the mechanics. I don't want people to be like pros or anything, but I just want to be like, okay, we've learned this part of the fight, we don't have to learn this part of the fight anymore, let's move on and learn the next part of the fight, right? That's one of the reasons why I haven't done extremes and savages yet. I want to eventually get a proper group to do those. But I feel like in general, when you go into normal modes, I feel like players are just more competent. The average Final Fantasy XIV player is more competent than the average World of Warcraft player. I know that some people are going to take offense to this and all of that, but here's a very simple fact. You can queue to every single normal raid in Final Fantasy XIV, and there's a very low chance that you're not going to do the raid. Because people will start discussing and say, okay, this phase we're missing this thing, that phase we're missing that thing. And the way in which mechanics are communicated, like you see a stack marker, you're like, I know that's a stack marker. You see like the doom things coming down, you're like, I know that somebody needs to stand on that, otherwise we're all gonna die. So it's like you can tell. And the game just does like a really good job at communicating to players when they mess up. So like in World of Warcraft, when you mess up, it's communicated to you how? A chunk of damage. There's just a chunk of damage. And you're left wondering, is this a healer mechanic? Is this something that I messed up? Like, depending on the raid, depending on, everyone's perception and whatnot. But you're left wondering a little bit, particularly if it's the first time you're doing a boss and you get a chunk of damage. And you're like, okay, is this a healer check? Is this something that I stood in something? And because sometimes the markers in WoW, they're not like, there's not a clear delineation of where it begins and where it ends. Sometimes it could be something like a noxious smoke or something, and you're like, am I at the edge of it? Am I not? I don't know. And in 14 is like, hey, here's a vuln stack. That means you messed up, dummy. It's like a cap of shame. Here you go. Here's a cone of shame. And they keep stacking them on you. It's like, hey, look, 2 now. Now there's 3. Now there's 4. Look at you messing up so much. And if you die, they also give you another cap of shame. It's like, hey, look, you died. Look, now you deal less damage. So it's like the game is good at communicating to you when you've messed up. It's like, hey, you see this thing, this vulnerability stack? That means you messed up. Or if you're doing the Bozzer raids, which you haven't done, they have a different mechanic there, which is twice comes doom, which is really, really fun. It's instead of them giving you vuln stacks, it's like first time they give you a warning. They're like, hey, you messed this up again and I'm gonna kill you. And then the second time they kill you. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was doing the first dungeon in Endwalker, and it was one of the first times I had 5 of those vuln stacks on me. And I was like, wow, I really messed up here. I died, I think, once and got rezzed. But that's something I think is really different, too, about the dungeon experience is, like you said, it lets you know when you do things wrong. It doesn't instantly punish you. There's so many times in Warcraft where I've died and I've been like, what just happened? Like, it happens in a second. And you're like, I don't know what I did wrong there. No clue. So then you have to go read guides and other things. And, you know, even if looking at your damage or even at looking at the damage log, you may not be able to figure out exactly what killed you or what sequence of events caused you to die. But, you know, it's interesting. The one thing I also find that's very refreshing that I think limits the amount of toxicity is the fact that all your healers and 2 of your DPS can res with impunity. Yes, you come back and you do less damage, and you have that.
I wouldn't say impunity.
Okay, I that's true. Yeah. That's an over exaggeration, but you know they can res as many times as they have the mana for, and it's going to put strain on the party, and it's going to make the fight more difficult, of course. But there's still a way to bring people back so you continue to learn the fight. And you can, yes. Even if you may not, you know, beat a damage check, even if you may not, you know, beat the boss, there's still all right, well, if someone dies, there's hope. There's hope either through learning or there's hope through, well, maybe we can push through this and get through this. Whereas in WoW, they limit the number of battle reses that you have. And if someone dies, especially in a Mythic Plus run or something like that, well, your key timer's messed up. You're done. You know, you're not going to time that key. And that's where I think people start to go, all right, well, then I'm just going to drop because if I don't time the key, then it's not worth it. Yeah. And here it's like if someone dies, there's still, you know, it's like the Dumb and Dumber thing. So you're saying we've got a chance and someone just comes back to life and you can keep trying if you want. And I think that design choice intentionally limits the amount of toxicity and just unforgiving nature of some of the dungeons and whatnot too.
And at the same time, if you want those unforgiving encounters, they have them in the form of like savages and extremes and especially ultimates. Because like an ultimate, somebody dies, is like it's not res them with impunity. I can guarantee you that. They're going to feel it in an ultimate every time somebody dies and go like, oh no.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's just a different way of approaching something, right?
Yeah.
So where it's not one split second can ruin an entire run, which it can, like you said, in those higher difficulties, but there is still learning to be had in bringing someone back and having them continue to go through the mechanics, whereas they're just sitting on the sideline waiting.
Yeah. Even if you wipe, there's value in bringing people back and like continuing to okay, let's push it and see the next phase. Let's keep going. Even if we don't beat it, at least let's see what the next phase is so that we start, you know, understanding the mechanics and whatnot. And I'll tell you right now, it's actually a lot of fun to do the raids when they are fresh. Because like when I started playing, it was right around the time that Shadowbringers came out and I had to go through Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and I didn't rush it. Like I really, really took my time. But eventually, you know, I got caught up and it was really cool because by the time I was caught up, I think it was around the time that the last tier of Eden came out. And it was really cool being on the front lines and trying bosses where nobody knew the strategy yet. And it was really fun discovering that, you know, actually experiencing the mechanics fresh for the first time was really, really cool. I loved it. It was an amazing experience.
And it's very nice too, because you could just get put into a random group of people that you've never met before and you're all there working together instead of trying to flame each other or kick each other, you know, within the first wipe or first 5 minutes and someone's already mad at someone else and the group just doesn't have that level of cohesion. And that community bit, and I think it goes to a lot of the stuff that we've talked about with design choices and whatnot, but I don't know if you feel this way, but the thing that I find myself being really grateful towards Final Fantasy XIV about is I feel like it's made me a better person. I found myself down this negative rabbit hole of becoming that toxic, you know, person of just unforgiving. If someone's DC'd, if someone's out because they're ruining my experience, they're wasting my last 45 minutes, that just, it sucks everybody in, you know, and I think it starts to fragment parts of people's souls a little bit. And when I got to 14 and there's just such a supportive nature, yeah, there's jerks out there for sure, but I've ran into so few. I've run into so few. And even the ones that are jerks are like, they're the top 1% of the toxic people in World of Warcraft. They're like, well, you know, I'm sorry you guys are not very good. I'm going to log off. Whereas in WoW, it would be like a string of multiple expletives, you know, in a series. And I think just that lack of pressure, the ability to kind of play the game that you want has just really helped me calm the hell down and relax and enjoy myself a lot more. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I mean, I feel like that's the experience for a lot of people. In my case, I wouldn't really. It hasn't affected me as much. Sure, it might have made me a little bit nicer, even, but like by my own nature, like I tend to be very inclusive when it comes to games. Like one of the things where I started my main channel was trying to get people to play Dark Souls by explaining it's not as hard as everybody's making it out to be. So I've always been the kind of guy that's like, I'm always trying to bring more people in to play the games that I like that may be a little bit more niche. Like Dark Souls used to be incredibly niche back in the day, but eventually it became much more mainstream, and now a lot of people play Dark Souls. Back in the day when I started making videos, it was very, very niche. And another game that was niche, Monster Hunter, very, very niche. And I would always like to, hey, listen, it's not as complicated. Like try out this thing with this weapon and do that thing. So I've always tried to include people and tell them like, look, this isn't as hard. This isn't that complicated. So to me, it wasn't as big of an impact. But the thing that I definitely noticed is, yes, the community is very surprising because, like, again, in WoW, you'll wipe once and everybody's raging or whatever. It's, oh, this sucks. And 14, it's like, hey, you need some help. Like, let me, or say for instance, sometimes I'm tanking. And it'll be like a healer's first time in a dungeon or something. They'll be like, hey, you want me to pull less, or can I do wall to wall or something like that? And like, oh, no, pull, let's go. And then if we end up wiping at some point, I'll be like, hey, you want me to pull those packs one at a time? You want to do it the same? And you just give people a chance to dictate the way that they play the game. Like that's the way that I always play, basically.
Well, you're a better man than me, so I don't know. But yeah, Final Fantasy's been like chicken soup for my soul in terms of making me just appreciate the little things in life a lot more, and the connections that you make with people in the game. So, well, I want to be oh, go ahead.
I imagine that maybe I haven't gotten as far down as some people in WoW, because I've taken those breaks and it's like, oh, Cataclysm ain't doing it for me. I'm skipping out. Peace. I'll play Warlords Arena for a little bit. Yeah, this isn't fun. Skipping out. It's like, to me, when something stops being fun, I'll just stop playing it. And so I don't care. Which is, I've been playing 14 pretty much almost nonstop. I only take breaks to play other games. It's like, it's still fun.
But it's nice that you can take breaks to play other games.
Yeah.
I still
and
haven't
Yoshi
finished.
encourages it. The friggin' game director encourages it. It's insane. Like, imagine literally anyone at Blizzard be like, hey, you guys want to take a break from our game? Yeah, go right ahead. Dude, heads would roll. Bobby Kotick would come down swinging an axe. Like, what? You told people take a... No. They got to play our game forever until their eyes bleed. Their kids need to play our game too. It needs to be hereditary, like a disease.
Let's be careful. We'll say allegedly Bobby Kotick would do that, so we don't get into trouble here. But no, I mean, and it's fun too to see Yoshi P talk about how, he talks about the influence. Weirdly enough, I can't believe he brought up Call of Duty, but when he kind of explained it about like, you're a small party, you're trying to go out there and save the world, I was like, that actually kind of makes sense, and how he kind of pulls those inspirations from different things. But yeah, I mean, I still have not finished Persona 5, and I've been playing it for the better part of 2 years because every time I wanted to play it, it was like, well, I better do Torghast, or well, I better do this stuff, and I can't invest, an entire night to just, doing different things and doing the storyline in Persona, to now where I want to play Endwalker, but if I want to take a break in a couple months, I can do that and go finish Persona, or I could go play one of the, Elden Ring, or one of the million awesome games that are coming out pretty soon. And it's just nice to not have that pressure, and to get some inspiration to come back and appreciate those differences too. And I think that's a very unique and healthy take for a game developer to say that. And you got to come at that from a position, I would say, of confidence and strength in your product, because he's confident that, yeah, you can go try other things, and we'll know that you'll come back because we're confident in what we make. Whereas with Blizzard and WoW, it just feels like, well, if we don't keep them in here, we're going to lose them. So we have to keep them doing this. Otherwise, they're going to see what it's like on the other side. Oh my goodness, they'll leave us. Like, we got to just control and keep them in. It's like a controlling, like, significant other almost.
it feels desperate, a lot of the stuff that they end up doing, like some of their release schedule on patches and Season of Mastery and all of the missteps that they've been doing there. Like I wanted to watch this Asmongold video that I'm thinking about watching it on stream, but it's like I read the description today because I ran into that video again, and in the description he basically stated that apparently people were able to transfer their classic characters into Season of Mastery. So like,
doesn't that defeat the whole point?
I don't know if that, I mean, I just briefly read through the description. That's what it seemed like. I haven't actually watched the video, so don't take this, you know, big bag of salt.
For sure either.
But it's like, if you can do that, oh my God. That's so bad. That's insane.
I wonder if they're selling level boosts for Season of Mastery too. I haven't seen, but they might be doing that too.
Jesus Christ. That's so bad. And the fact that like their level boost to 60 was like $60. I'm like, dude, what? That's insane. It's so crazy that it's just like, oh yeah, buy the expansion, pay the monthly fee, and by the way, don't actually play all this content that we develop. Just skip it. Let's stick it to 60. Boom, done.
Well, it's hilarious too, because you know I've kept track of when they release those level 60 endgame boosts for like the main retail expansions, and since they've started doing them, and they've always done them usually after the final raid releases, you know, a few weeks after that, and it's usually in that lull period between like the mythic or world first race to mythic raid is done. You know, we're just waiting on the next expansion, maybe a month or two or a couple months out from the next expansion. Then we go, okay, if someone wants to buy a boost because they pre-ordered and we bring it out as part of the pre-order for the next expansion, they can buy a boost then. This time around in Shadowlands, they were like, no, let's just release the level 60 boost before the final patch even releases. It's
wild.
It seemed like if that's the ripcord you want to pull, then okay, you pulled that ripcord very quickly. Why didn't you pull the ripcord on the Covenants faster than that? But
that was the Covenants thing was so stupid. It's just so stupid. And the worst part is that then they come out and they didn't even admit like that they were like, oh well, no, it just made sense to do it. And I'm just like, dude, shut the hell up. It made sense to do it.
Yeah.
They can't even admit when they make a mistake. It's just like, no, everything's fine. Everything's doing great. We're doing fantastic. Great numbers. And it's like, you can see that a lot of their marketing pushes are so slimy to inflate the monthly active user. It's just like when you really start going down the you know, the mythical rabbit hole with them, you start like, oh man, you guys are just doing so much shady stuff. It's just disgusting. Now there's been reports that there were people that were stealing breast milk over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what kind of a sick person steals breast milk?
I don't know. Have you seen Amazon's The Boys, the TV show?
No.
So there's some scenes in there involving breast milk that are equally incredibly disturbing. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, the stuff that they're talking about with breast milk at Blizzard, I can't believe we're talking about this. Like, this is even a thing, right? I mean, the absurdity level of what Blizzard was and what we thought they were. Every voice matters, you know, this wonderful place where creativity and imagination come up with all this stuff, to the lawsuit, and you start to see the chinks in that armor, and you start to see, you know, the seedy underbelly of the monetary side of Blizzard, of the corporate side of Blizzard, to then you hit the lawsuits with all the sexual harassment and everything, and you're like, okay, now you're really not who we thought we were. Compound that with Blitzchung and the whole Hong Kong thing. And then
it's
fast forward to, you know, Bobby Kotick's threatening to kill people, allegedly, that was settled out of court. The Wall Street Journal stuff. You got multiple states in the United States suing them now, or not suing them.
Him threatening to kill people is not allegedly. It's been confirmed.
Okay.
He did it.
Yeah, well, I guess if you settle it out of court, I'm not sure if it's still allegedly
it's because actually someone came out and apologized for his behavior. So it's like they're admitting that he did it. He freaking did it.
But
the allegedly part was the one where he said to some flight hosts, whatever. She got sexually harassed by the pilot, and he was like, "I'll destroy you." That part is allegedly. Didn't actually know.
But I mean, then you fast forward to the layoffs and everything after that. They're already under scrutiny. You have the different states treasurers who are saying, and they're invested in Activision Blizzard, saying, we don't have any confidence in your leadership or members of the board to right this ship. That they have I think the quote that they used was something like the talent or the interest to do it or something like that. And then right after that, they decide to lay off a bunch of more seasonal employees, which I get is a thing that a lot of companies do. It's not a specific Activision Blizzard thing, but from a PR perspective, it's like, could you pick a worse time to do something like that too, where people are already complaining about that? To a couple days ago, and now we have to deal with breast milk getting stolen and padlocks on refrigerators. Are you kidding me? Like, were we in clown world? What's going on?
And the fact that they were getting sued because of pay disparagement between genders, and then they have the co-lead situation where when Jen O'Neill and Mike Ibarra were named leaders, and I was following it through Bellular's videos and whatnot, and I actually I was looking at that very positively. I was like, I came out of that like thinking, hey, this is cool because this Mike Ibarra guy, he actually plays the game. Jen O'Neill, she seems to be really good at what she's doing over there in Vicarious Visions. So this could actually be something that could be a really good step. And then they make the dumbest thing where they don't pay her the same as Mike. What are you doing?
I mean, I would give them
just to as a basis for let's just do it, even if it's not what we should be doing. Let's just do it, and let's just try to set a precedent to do things right this time around. But no, not even that. They're like, no, we just don't pay women the same here. No,
I would have given them a pass if that story had broke like within a week and they were still doing contract negotiations and everything. If that had happened within a week and they got it right at the end of the week, I'd be like, yeah, it takes some time to get some of the paperwork and all that stuff figured out. 3 months. Apparently both Mike Ybarra and Jen O'Neill asked for it together.
Yeah.
3 months? Sorry, I'm yelling. It just makes me angry.
I get it. I get it because we make these videos because we're talking about this, and some people will come to the conclusion like, okay, you guys are just like farming the drama and all that stuff. It's like, listen, I don't care about the farming of the whatever. It's like, I just would like to eventually see this turn around, because at the end of the day, I still like the Warcraft IP. Mm-hmm. I want to play Diablo 2, but I've made it a point that like, listen, I will not play Diablo 2 until, or if we eventually get like some kind of redemption arc for Blizzard, because I've been waiting for a Diablo 2 remaster for so long. Because like Diablo 2 is one of potentially my favorite IP that Blizzard has ever made. I love Diablo 2. And basically to just, see the Diablo 2 that I want to play within reach and the way that Blizzard is going. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to play it until or if you guys are able to clean up your act. And I can't play it. And I want to. I really want to. And it's like, I'm not gonna give Blizzard any money until they fix up whatever the hell they're doing.
No, because
it's ridiculous.
Because they sold us for years, and yeah, I know that there's probably people out there saying, "Oh, you're just trying to make money off the drama." I just started this channel as a goof because I was really sad about choosing to leave one of my favorite IPs. And when you said like, you love the Warcraft IP, if I had to rank, I won't rank them in order, but my top 5 favorite IPs: Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Final Fantasy, and Resident Evil. Those are my 5 favorite properties in games, and Blizzard owns 3 of them. I've admired Blizzard my whole life. I love talking games and I love talking about those things. And Blizzard was one of those companies that espoused to be everything that I knew that gamers could be. Which was great people, creative ideas, and bringing people together. getting people who never would have otherwise got to play together and meet together. That community thing. I know BlizzCon did a number of years back that video about, what is my fondest memories of Warcraft. It's bringing my dad and I closer together, or keeping my friends together. That was the emotion that Blizzard was tapping into, and that I just loved. I saw that and said, not only do they have some of my favorite IPs, but they're also a company that is pushing for the types of things that I know that games can be for people. And to see all that crashing down has been very, very I mean, people say, well, get over it. It's just a game company. I'm like, but it's not just a game company. It's the people that work there. It's their lives too.
Those same people that say, just get over it, it's just a game company, are probably the same people that were spazzing out during season 8 of Game of Thrones. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe you would do this. It's like, yeah, you're spazzing out over your favorite TV show, but somehow we're not allowed to like our video games. Or you're spazzing out about some kind of like sports team or something like that. Everybody has passions. It's that simple. And it's very easy when your passions are not aligned with somebody else's. You can just whatever, dude. It's just a job. Get over it. Right. Yeah. It's very easy to go like that. It's just a video game. Get over it. Yeah. And it's like, hey, your favorite soccer team lost or your football team lost. Hey, it's just a game. Get over it. It's like, you don't understand. They're not qualified for the playoffs or the finals or the semifinals or whatever. You don't get it. And it's like, yeah, it's just a game, man. Get over it. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Everybody has something that they're passionate about.
Yeah. I mean, and I know I make memes and stuff, and I crack jokes, but underneath a lot of that is just a lot of sadness, right? It's just my comedy is my way to deal with something that makes me pretty sad. I want both Final Fantasy and I want Warcraft to be great. I want them both to be awesome, because first, competition makes for better games overall when you've got serious competition within that space. But two, and I don't want to say two, even more importantly, I want every employee at Blizzard Entertainment and Activision to have a place, and I want everybody at every company, any place, everywhere, to have a place where they can feel safe to be able to go to work, to be able to enjoy and actually dedicate their attention towards making something that brings other people joy, that they don't have to worry about putting a freaking padlock on a breast milk refrigerator, or worried about cube crawls, or people walking around, groping people in the middle of the office at random points of the day. Nobody should have to deal with that. And to see it would be like, I know Disney's sheen has kind of been left behind a little bit in recent years, because as they continue to grow and grow, but it would be like if all of a sudden you found out that Disney was like the worst company on planet Earth, and everybody, at Disney was just a horrible person.
Have you seen the Star Wars sequels?
Well, yeah, I've seen them. But you know what I'm saying? Like if all of a sudden you found out that George Lucas was this monster, not just a guy that made kind of subpar prequels, but like was this monster of a human being, it taints those memories. Yeah. It taints decades of memories. And that's how I feel about, the Warcraft IP, Diablo, about StarCraft is, I used to think back on all those things and were, when I was playing them, of just, well, it's good to support a company that does things the right way. And it's good to know and to focus on the IP. But now when I think about playing Warcraft, all I can think about is what those people were going through when they were making it. And it taints those memories, and it's hard to shake. And I don't think you should shake it, right? And so for all the people like me, I think the only way that you really can make a difference as consumers is to vote with your wallet, because talk is cheap, like what we're doing right now. Talk is cheap. I'm making like no money off this channel. Like I barely make enough, off this channel to even afford maybe half of a lunch a day or something like that. But I don't do it for that. I do it for the love of the game, and I do it because I like talking about these things. But talk is cheap, The only way that you're going to be able to make a difference, I think, as a consumer is, if you want to, it's of course your choice, is to vote with your wallet.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say to people, like, you shouldn't feel bad about playing WoW. You shouldn't feel
No.
bad about playing Diablo. You shouldn't feel bad about anything. It is what it is. Life is too short. You should enjoy what you enjoy. Like, I'll play video games that maybe are not, the most popular that people don't like. Like, for instance, I actually liked Anthem. I thought Anthem was a pretty cool game in terms of gameplay, but it had a whole lot of problems for sure. But I still played Anthem. It's like, it is what it is.
Well, and I mean, if you don't care, if the things that we're talking about here don't bother you, or I'm not going to judge you for that, or you just the importance of the game and what the community and the game and the people that you play the game with means more to you than that's your prerogative. Like, I'm not going to judge you for that. But for me, it's one of those things that was important for me to take a stand, and I think it made it easier too because I wasn't raiding at the time. And I didn't have. I mean, I have a group of friends over there, but I wasn't really, because I'd taken so many breaks. I wasn't part of the main core raid team and stuff. So, the gameplay stuff was kind of already fading, I should say, and the love of the game was already kind of fading in terms of the mechanics. So it was easy for me to step away. But I can tell you that if I was still in that raid team, I'd probably still be paying a monthly sub too. I would probably limit my race changes and other things, all these other microtransactions and stuff that you do, but I would still be paying my monthly sub.
How much Fantasia did you buy in 14, dude? If you're into that stuff, dude.
It's funny. I've probably spent maybe about $50 on Fantasia throughout my whole time playing 14. Maybe a little bit more. But ever since I finally said, like, I've tried everything out and I'm Lalafell and I just like being a Lalafell, I have an extra Fantasia that I wish I could just give somebody because I'm not changing anymore. Now that I've kind of settled in on being a Lalafell about 6 months ago, I'm like, this is who I am. I enjoy this the most. I kept trying to tell myself, well, it's kind of silly to see myself do the potato walk into all the
potato walk is amazing.
Yeah, but I mean it if you're trying to be super edgy and whatnot, it feels a little odd that you're walking around like that and walking into these serious situations, or when you showdown with Gaius and he's like, you who have the power to rule, and you're a little potato there. It's funny. And I was trying to like reconcile that in my head of like, well, maybe I want to look like a little more like a serious person here in this world and whatnot. Until finally I was like, what, screw it. I love being a Lalafell and I'm not changing anytime soon. So I wish they'd let me trade away that last Fantasia I have.
I've went back and forth with between Hire and Lalafell. Like, I've done it probably, I don't know, 6 times or so, because I really like the whole idea of the dwarf, but Lalafells are just too small. That's the problem. It's like, no, they need to be just a little bit bigger and like muscular. That's what I want. I want a big buff Lalafell.
Yeah, I've been
fantasy dwarf.
I've been everything but an Aura. I'm not big into the Aura. But like I said, at the end of the day, I just kept coming back to Lalafell. So that's who I am.
How have you been enjoying Endwalker? Like, what level MSQ are you at? Which is, we're not going to talk in spoilers. Still way too early.
Yeah, so I have just gotten past the first dungeon, and I believe I'm on my way to the next areas there. So my Gunbreaker and my Summoner Scholar are all like just about to hit 85. I know I'm ahead on all of that in terms of like the quest level versus the MSQ, but it's funny because every time I log in, which it hasn't been a lot lately because I've been very busy at work and other things, but and then you deal with the login queue. And when I get in the login queue, I'm like, I kind of just want to do roulettes right now and not focus on the MSQ. Or they do this to you where they say, all right, now you can G pose with the Scions at this point in time.
Yep.
And then I spend 5 hours like G
I've taken
posing.
So many screenshots.
I got to G pose with my favorite edgy dragoon for a number of hours yesterday. Yeah, so every time they're like, well, these people are accompanying you. And I'm like, oh, crap. Well, guess I'm not progressing the MSQ right now because I'm going to have fun doing this. And so that's about where I am. But, I haven't really got to delve, like fully into Endwalker. I'm really enjoying it so far. There's been moments that really make me smile. Like 10 minutes in, I tweeted out like 10 minutes into the Endwalker, and I'm already grinning ear to ear in terms of the story.
Yeah.
And then I just got to a moment. I guess maybe I'm going to be as vague as possible. There's a part where there's a dinner party. I mean, if you consider that a spoiler. I was grinning ear to ear during that dinner party.
That scene is fantastic. It's so good.
It reminded me of something in Persona, where it's like one of those nice slice of life moments where you all just take a break from saving the world and just have a moment together as your party. And I think Endwalker's doing a fantastic job at continuing that, but I think that the one thing that makes a huge difference for me, because I am very into the story. I was the person that watched pretty much every novel video on the lore of Warcraft. I watched all of Pyromancer's speculation videos and crazy tinfoil hat stuff and Akalon stuff. I loved all that stuff. But, the thing that I just think, not just 14, but really so many Final Fantasy games just do such a great job at is building that camaraderie to where these fake, like, characters, right?
Don't you call them fake?
Okay.
What the hell does that mean? Don't you call them fake? Listen.
These creations, these characters, right, feel like real people, and they feel like your friends.
I've spent the better part of last night crying. All right, Don't you call them fake?
Well, I'm saying that because I don't feel like they're an artist's creation, right? I feel like they're real friends, and that sounds psychotic, right? From if someone who's not a gamer is listening to this, you're like, okay, they're losing their minds, and
these people are crazy.
Yeah, and I'm reaping all the benefits. But it's. I will say this, like, I have cried more throughout the 14 story than any story in any medium, games, movies, TV, anything, period, because of the connection that you build with those characters. And the moment, I won't do spoilers, but the ending of the end of 5.3, when you leave the area and you leave, the group of people behind, I was emotionally wrecked for about 30 minutes because I felt like I was saying goodbye to like my best friends in the world, and I was never going to see them again. And it messed me up.
And it's like there's an aspect to Endwalker which is like, this is it. This is the end of the story. And I haven't finished yet. I don't know what happens still, but I'm actually at the quest that is called Endwalker.
So that's probably the end, or at least very close to it, because Shadowbringers was the last quest of 5.0. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm at that quest, and it's like it's very hard. It's hard to describe because like the story of 14 is not going to resonate as much with other people. And I've noticed that because every time that I start talking about the story of 14, there's always someone that says it's overrated. It's not that good. I've played it. I've done it. And it's like, I guess that there's just something about it that really resonates with me. And I think it resonates with a lot of people because a lot of people get emotional with this particular story. But it's actually gotten to the point where in the moment that I'm at an Endwalker, it doesn't matter what happens. This is... the conjunction of the entire arc from Realm Reborn to Endwalker, this is the best story that I've ever experienced in any medium, like be it movies, books, games. And I know that some people are going to be like, oh, you got to read a good book. It's like, I've read plenty of good books. Okay. I'm not someone that doesn't read. I've read plenty of books, but this is the best because of the way in which you experience it. And like you said, the time that you spent with these characters and the stuff that you go through together it just adds a dimension to it that I haven't seen any other game do anything even remotely close, or any other medium. But the thing is, other mediums can't do it because it's not like you can interact with characters in other mediums, right? It's a story, it's being told. You see the characters, you might get emotional here and there, but it's not like you're interacting with these characters and they're interacting with you. which the way in which they've done it in this game, I've never seen it done before.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it. I will say some of the closest moments that I can think of in other games. I don't know if you've played The Last of Us, the first one.
Yes.
So the end of The Last of Us, and I'm not going to say too many, like I'll be as vague as possible here too, where you're given that choice at the like very end, and it's not really a choice.
It's not a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
They're forcing you down a path, but they're prompting you in your mind to think of it like it would be a choice. And to me, it was such a brilliant moment of storytelling because I'm like, the emotional journey up until that point, I'm like, there is no choice here. There is no choice here.
Exactly.
I'm, and so it plays with your emotions in that
Like,
perspective. But that's a moment. Whereas Final Fantasy 14
that
has
moment,
a string of many moments.
Like, I'll tell you right now, that moment to me, it was like I didn't even hesitate.
Yeah, I didn't
like
either.
The second they gave me control of the character, done.
Right.
It's like, there you go.
Right. And I think that that's a powerful thing, right? That they were able to get you into that character and that mindset to where they're kind of letting you think you have a choice, but you really don't even want the choice. And that's, I think, a really unique moment in gaming. But as far as just tear jerking, it's not just about crying, right? It's about the emotion of attachment, of friendships, of all that stuff. And I wonder, because we're both, I would say, let's just say seasoned gentlemen at this point in time in our lives, that we've seen a lot of these things in our own lives.
That's a really funny way of saying old. Seasoned gentlemen.
Well, when you season something, it tastes good, right? So it's a positive thing. But I've been through a lot in my life at this point in time, as I'm sure you probably have as well. And I wonder if there's something to the fact that, we've been through a number of these things in our own personal lives that when these moments of friendship and these moments of camaraderie and these moments of just anguish and stuff like that they hit closer because we have experienced similar things, or at least comparable emotions, so that we have that wider range of perspective. And I wonder, if let's just say a 14-year-old were to be playing, or a 13-year-old were to be playing, Final Fantasy 14, would they have that same reaction to the story? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I can tell you as a 13-year-old, like I cried when it was the first time I think I've ever cried at anything that was not real life, was the Eris moment in Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if you've played Final Fantasy VII. Okay.
Nope. I tried. I've played the remaster.
But I'm not big on the remaster, but there's a moment in there where a very emotional thing happens, and it's because like that person's been a part of your party for, the better part of 20 something hours in the game. So
I know what you're talking about.
You've gotten to know them and everything. And that moment hit me, and I was only 12 or 13 when that moment happened in my life. And it hit me hard, because I hadn't experienced anything like that yet, even in my personal life. But I think, if I were to rewind back and it were to be, 12, 13-year-old me playing Final Fantasy 14, that is, I don't know if I would have the same extremely strong emotions to some of these bits, because it does feel like Yoshi P and Ishikawa and Koji Fox and all the other Soken, all the people that, everybody who's involved in telling these stories have been through similar things, and they know what that feeling is like in real life, and they're able to just convey it so well in this world, because it feels like it's coming from a place of direct knowledge that they've felt it too.
And not only that, but in the case of Endwalker, you haven't gotten to experience some of these things, but it's like some of the things that you might think have like been shelved, like that you've experienced throughout the other expansions, they're going to bring them back out. And they're going to make sure that you feel every single thing. For a lot of things that you feel that you've shelved, they're going to bring it back out, and they go, no. You thought this was done? No. We got more. Let's go. And it's insane. It's actually insane. The mastery that they have of this story is just like, I don't even know how it's possible.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's like a lot of the things that happened in the story, I was like, I could see them coming. And when they would happen, it would still hit me like a ton of breakers. Like, oh, damn, it's still going to happen.
Because it's that culmination of the music, of the writing. You know, there's that line that is her name Lena? I think her name's Lena.
Lise?
No.
No, Lena. I know.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
The writing when she's saying goodbye and everything is holy crap. I mean, I'm going to use that when I have to give some type of speech at some point. I'm going to use that exact same line about, you know, saying goodbye and looking back with a smile and all. I mean, it's great writing. Great. And the music just, and everything, the cinematography, the music, everything else just adds to it. And
oh my God, it's just like, I almost wish we could talk about something specific about the music, but I'm not going to say it. Oh God.
Oh, well, you know,
let's just say that there's certain music that when it plays, right? Oh my God. I've been listening to a certain track on repeat almost these past couple of days.
Is it the one from not the cinematic trailer, but the launch trailer? Is it that song? Because I don't even know the context of when that song is going to play. But when I heard that in the launch trailer after the live letter, I was like, this song's great. I need to have this track. And I've been listening to it as I've been working, even though I don't know the context because I just love the song. So I know that I've already got an emotional attachment to it now when I get to it in the game.
That song's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, dude.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to do this again because I mean, if we get to the point where I get finally caught up with Endwalker and everything, we should probably, you know, if you wouldn't mind, we could do a full spoilerific episode of chatting about everything that messed with us emotionally and the whole story with no restrictions. That'd be great.
Yep. I'll be down for that. Sure.
So, well, I want to be respectful of your time. We've already gone in a full hour and 50 minutes here, and I said that I would keep it to an hour, but
it's like, look, when I do I have my podcast, my Monster Hunter podcast. We usually go like 3 hours, so it's like I'm just very easy to keep talking and never stop.
Yeah. Well, no, it's great, and I mean, this is the first time you and I have met, so it's always great. The one thing I've really truly enjoyed about doing these podcasts is just meeting different people that I've never had the opportunity to talk with before, and every time, you know, I talk with somebody, it's like meeting a friend that I just didn't know I had for many years, and it just feels really, really good, and just like you're talking about something that you just both love and enjoy, and it's an amazing feeling. Last episode, I got to talk with my best friend about some of the stuff, and he's a very new player and very kind of still in Stormblood and everything, but it's been really great to get to meet so many people that are just part of this WoW refugee wave and people who are just all on board with Final Fantasy 14 now. And so it's been one of the best pleasures of my life being able to talk with all of the people that have been guests, including yourself.
It's one of the best things about connecting with other creators is basically just you both get to talk about something that is, a common interest, which is pretty cool.
I mean, we're both psychotic enough to start, channels entirely dedicated towards gaming and other things. So yeah, we're nothing if not passionate about some of these things. So, well, Rurikhan, thank you so much for being here. Do you want to plug all your social channels and Twitch stream and YouTube page for everybody in case for some weird reason they don't know who you are?
No, I mean, it's like pretty much anything that if you ever want to find me anywhere, just search Rurikhan, so like youtube.com/Rurikhan. I have actually 2 channels, Twitch/Rurikhan, also Twitter/Rurikhan. You can find me anywhere, just like Rurikhan. That's it.
Great. Well, again, truly appreciate you being here. And thank you everybody at home for listening to this episode of the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy 14 podcast. I hope that you all stay well and peace out.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Popoto Pub. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more episodes. Take care, everyone, and peace out.